Alright, so this will be the last video for this week. I would encourage you, I didn't put specific dates up in Blackboard because I want you guys to be able to move at your own pace through the week, but you should have watched this video by Wednesday at the latest. I would encourage you to do probably 2 on Monday and then 2 on Wednesday. Okay? But now, the very last video, we're going to talk about your assignment for the week. So your assignment for the week is going to be on page 193. It's going to be number 4, so 733 will be above it. And I mentioned that in the, not the last video, but the video before that, when I was talking about sight reading and stuff. So I would encourage you to sight read through this first, just so you can get an idea of what is going to be a little bit more challenging, what's going to be a little bit easier and won't need as much practice time. This is not a very long example and it's very slow, so hopefully this is not going to be super challenging for all of you, minus the fact that it might have been a while since you've touched a piano. So do all of the tips that we talked about in the last video and anything that works with you for sight reading. So looking at the clefs, looking at the time signature. We don't have a key signature in this piece, which is great. We have a few added in sharps that you'll deal with as you play through the piece, but we don't have a key signature to worry about. So that should take a load off your mind in the first place. The tempo is going to be andante moderato, so moderately slow-ish. I'm not going to be, well, actually the assignment is just for submitting it, but I won't make any comments on the tempo unless it is way too fast or it is kind of to the point where it's way too slow. But you have a lot of leeway in terms of that, whatever you feel comfortable with, especially in this first week because we're kind of getting back into the swing of things and figuring things out. So when you start sight reading, definitely start at a gravely slow tempo. Your goal is to work up from, maybe I'm just going to play a few measures just to demonstrate, maybe something like this. Which obviously for me is a little bit boring, but might be a little bit more of a way for you guys to get comfortable with all the notes and everything. I would set a goal. I would highly encourage you, if you don't have a metronome, download it on your phone or like a physical metronome to download an app. I believe it's Pro Metronome. Whatever it is, it's free, and there's a lot of helpful tools, but I just basically use it and I just set the tempo to whatever and I don't deal with anything else. So I would suggest if you want to start with something a little bit slower, let's say like 50 would be a little bit slow, but that might be a good tempo to sight read. And then see if you can work up to something closer to 70 by the end of the week. It's going to be a little bit different probably for everyone and based on your past experience, but just something where you start very slow and work your way up to the next level, then that would be great. Okay? So after you have sight read through it and figured out what's challenging, then you'll go back to the beginning, and breaking into chunks I found is a super helpful way, especially kind of when I was a little bit younger. It helped a lot in managing how much music was in front of me. Now, obviously this is just 2 lines, but it's still going to help. The more that you develop these habits now with things that are easier, the more likely that they're going to stick around for when you get to stuff that's harder. So by the time you get to proficiency, you already know how to take a piece that I may not give you a ton of tips on and dissect it into parts and work on what you need to. So definitely do not try to learn this all in one day. I know that this is college and I know that we all procrastinate and do things at the last minute, but I would strongly advise you not to get into this habit early. This is not going to take you very long, granted, and some of you might be able to learn it into a night, but I would not do it. Even if you only spend, 2 sessions on it, that is a little bit easier to tackle than trying to learn all of this at once. So what you could do is just pick, 4 measures maybe to work on a day. If that's a little bit too much, reduce it down to 2. So even just looking at this, and I'm going to, there's no way I can hold my computer, so I'm going to hold the book instead. Even just looking at these first 2 lines right down here, I'm going to peek over here. They look pretty much the same, but the only difference is that this, let me make sure I have the note right, C sharp is thrown in down here. So that might be a good idea for the first day, is to just take this part, since they're so similar, and practice them, and practice switching just back and forth in between those. Because this one down here is going to change from minor to major, so that's going to be something good to practice. I'm going to put this back up here while I keep talking. So, even with that, if you can look, measure 1 and 2, and measure 5 and 6, they're the same thing, just repeated. So if you want to even break that down, you don't even have to technically practice measure 3, or not measure 3, measure 2 and measure 6, as long as you practice measure 1 and measure 5, if that makes sense. So you could just practice, once you get to the point where you know the notes and everything like that, and then immediately jump down to 5 and practice that. Okay? It'll be very important, and I mentioned in the sight reading video, to know exactly where your notes are right off the bat. So even just spending probably about a few minutes for each line figuring out where exactly your hands are going to go. And then from there, we do move a little bit in the piece, and we'll talk about that in a second, but your hands should be relatively steady in that spot. Okay? So you can combine it into that, and then even just tackle that for, like, I don't want to say day, but maybe like take 5 minutes and work on tackling that. Depends on how easy this is for you right off of the bat. Okay? So, another important thing to look for, especially when you're looking through this example, very first thing is looking for, am I going to move or am I going to stay in one position? The farther you get, the less you can stay in one position. So as I told like the beginner class, enjoy it while it lasts. But in this, I would take probably 2 different practice sections for measures 3 and 4 right here. Even if you just broke, whoops, you cannot see that, down from here to here, because you're going to have to pick up your hand and move it from here to here, then that is actually work in and of itself. Moving is very, very difficult. This is not a big move, unlike one that we have at the very end, which we'll talk about in a second. I would just practice from there to there. Okay? It might seem a little bit silly to just spend time just sitting there. So our first 2 notes are F and D, but you're coming from E and C right here, just doing this, and even just going back and forth. I like to say, break it into as simple terms as your brain can possibly understand when you're trying to learn something new. Don't overcomplicate things. Okay? Now, the second line has basically the same premise, it's just that we have a few more sharps thrown in there. Okay? Now, if you look at the very last measure of the entire piece, you'll see that we have a really big move. We go from A and C sharp down here to the same 2 notes basically up here. However, especially if you're a little bit, coming back into this, your brain's going to see that and be like, oh my god, move, but not give you any other helpful information on how to actually move. So, what I would say is a couple of things. 1, do not be afraid to write stuff in right now at all. When you get to sight reading, you can't write anything in. But it's not a shameful thing to write stuff in. I still write stuff in. Granted, it's like extreme leisure lines and crazy things, but sometimes I have to write notes in. So if I have to write notes in, it is very unfair of me to expect you guys to not write anything in and just know everything off the top of your heads. So even at this point, if you have to sit down with a pencil and write every single note in because it's been a while and you've just been like, oh no, I can't remember where anything is, I do not care. As long as you can play the correct notes, correct rhythm, and basically follow the outline of the piece, so going up and down and things like that, I do not care what it takes to get you there. Eventually, I would like to move away from that as much as possible, but for right now, it's okay. You can write in everything that you want. So, unless you look at it and you're like, at the very last measure, and you think to yourself, well, that's pretty easy, I know exactly where I'm going. If you look at that and it's a little bit more daunting, write those notes in. I do not care. So, number 2, the second thing, when you start with the very first 2 notes right here, to go all the way up an octave. That's basically the same as practicing any sort of, I don't know if there are any, former dancers or gymnasts or even like any sort of athletes. It's the same thing as just practicing a move. You're going to have to repeat it several times and watch very carefully so that it's going to stick in your brain. Okay? Thankfully, you do have some time in between there. You have a rest, so that should hopefully make things easier. Okay? So, what I'm going to do, and what I'm going to finish off with, is I am going to tilt it, not to where you guys can see everything that's going on, but at least have kind of an idea. And I am going to play the whole thing from beginning to end at a really decently slow tempo, without any sort of instruction. I will do this maybe for the first couple of weeks, but after that I'm going to stop doing this. So this is just if you're a little bit stuck and everything, you're like, I just don't know what it's supposed to look like. This can help for the first couple of weeks. I will not do that probably after week 3 or week 4, would be my guess. This is just kind of to ease you guys back in, okay? So, I'm going to pick, let's say I've practiced this quite a bit. I know exactly where my starting notes are, so in this piece I have to, but I've got my hands ready to go. I'm going to take a deep breath and relax before I start recording myself. And I'm going to pick a tempo that I know I feel comfortable with. So I'm not going to pull my metronome out right now, but I know I could probably play it maybe about 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So even if you guys count yourself out loud in the beginning of the video, I will not be mad. I will be absolutely thrilled, okay? I would suggest that, okay? All right, so I'm going to play just from the beginning to the end. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so that can, if you're a little bit stuck, if you can listen to that, that might help, hopefully a little bit, but I think that is everything to do with playing that. I would, in terms of recording yourself, so since, this is all online and everything, you guys will have to record yourself and submit it by Friday. I'm going to say at midnight because I know things happen. The sooner you can get it in the day, I will say that better feedback you can be, because I would love to start grading them almost every single Friday, and hopefully have them back to you by the end of Monday, Tuesday at the very latest. Not grading, giving you feedback rather. Sorry, test or grading. So I would suggest picking a certain amount of time in sometime on Friday. Our class time would work perfectly, okay? I realize that some of you hopefully will be using the office hours, so that doesn't work some other time on Friday. And taking, maybe, you will mess up and you can retake, but that, trust me, from someone who's doing these videos, will take a lot of time. Especially if, you're feeling a little bit frazzled and everything. It might take you 7 or 8 takes, and you do not want to wait until 10 at night to do that. I can promise you that. So pick out a certain amount of time. Give yourself time to do it. If you want to do like a test run, you could do that on like Thursday or Wednesday in the class and see where you're at. Then anything that is going to help you prep for that is going to be a good thing. Okay? I think that is everything for this week. So, have a great first week of classes. Stay healthy, wear your masks, wash your hands, register to vote, all that good stuff. And I will look forward to seeing your guys' videos on Friday. So, take care.